I'm Deanna Gillen here at the Field Service Conference with Paul Oliver, Head of Field Services Worldwide of Airbus. How are you doing today, Paul?
Very good, thank you. Great to be here.
Okay, well, so tomorrow you're giving a discussion on the evolution of field services. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. I think in Airbus we are a 40-year-old company, and in fact we've deployed field service for 40 years and not really changed our model very much.
Okay.
And yet our environment has changed considerably. So what I'd like to express tomorrow is a little bit about how that environment has changed, and then what deployment strategy we're using to adapt to those changes.
So how have you changed? How has that environment changed?
Well, I would say that it's changed dramatically. First of all, I don't have to say that the absolutely unimaginable changes in technology that have occurred have allowed us to do things differently.
Okay.
I think our customer base and the customer expectations have changed dramatically. We have different business models. We have much more requirement by our customers to be partners in their business.
Right.
Today we heard a little bit about outcome-based solutions. I think that that's the kind of thinking we need to have in our field service. And also Airbus itself has changed considerably, because 40 years ago we produced just 25 aircraft a year. Last year, for instance, we actually delivered 624 aircraft.
Wow.
So you can see that this tremendous scale up means that we can't just do things the way we used to do them. We need to adapt.
Okay, so you were talking about the customer expectations and how those have changed dramatically. In what way have they changed dramatically?
Well, I think it's worth saying that in the last 40 years we've had airlines that have gone from being traditional flag carriers to being now a multitude of different types of business model.
Okay.
So if you look at a low-cost carrier, for example, and I know that here you have Southwest, JetBlue and so on, the very DNA of these airlines is to have high utilization. And to achieve high utilization, you've got to have very fast turnarounds.
Right.
And you have to have a set of support services that are very appropriate to that particular business model. And that can be quite different to a flag carrier who is more interested in the total airline experience for the passenger, including the cabin and some of the other elements. So we've got a lot of different business models, which is driving different customer needs.
Okay. So you were also talking about how Airbus has changed just because of the revolutionary different pieces of technology that have rolled out in the past 40 years. So as we've seen in this conference, there's a whole wealth of new technology coming about, whether it's machine-to-machine, driverless cars, drones, the Internet of Things, augmented reality. So of all those new pieces of technology that are coming out, what are you most excited about and why?
Well, I think probably, as has been said at this conference, there is huge amounts of data that is coming back from the customer that we can make better use of in terms of really understanding how they use our equipment, how they use our services, and therefore have that level of customer intimacy that allows us to then make a better service. So it's really all about how we can best use all of that huge amount of data that is now available but wasn't available even just 10 years ago.
And so how do you leverage that data?
Well, at the moment it's used very much in the sense of predictive maintenance. So we're using a lot of software that allows the aircraft to do self-diagnosis essentially, and that in turn allows us to have a huge amount of data about how the aircraft performs in service.
Right.
And also, with 7,000 aircraft that we have in service now, every year that fleet gets a year older.
Right.
And it helps us, if we have that data, to understand how the aircraft perform as they get older, so that we can anticipate the kind of modifications and some of the additional activity and maintenance requirements in order to keep that useful economic life of the aircraft.
Right. So when do you think that change happened? When it moved from being when do you think that change happened in the industry? When it moved from being just fixing something to being more preventative and predictive? When do you think that shift happened?
Well, I think it happened really in the last 10 years, more than ever before. So again, when I talk about evolution of our field service population, we've moved from the traditional sense of being much more a sort of Wikipedia of Airbus, knowing the troubleshooting, knowing the aircraft, into now having much more of the data transferred directly to our headquarters and not necessarily going through our field service. So the role of the field service has also changed as a result of the technology changes. Okay.
And so my last question for you is, you're here at Field Service USA. What prompted you to come here? What do you think? What are you hoping to get out of this conference?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that it's proving to be very, very interesting, and I really appreciate having had the invitation. So it was definitely worth coming here. What's great to see is that a lot of people are facing the same issues that we have. And it's really very much about getting closer to the customer. It's confirming the messages that we are hearing and that we are trying to implement around knowing the customer better, making better use of the data which is now available because of increased technology. And so it's very reassuring to hear that this is happening across all other industries, because I think I'm the only one really from aviation here.
Right.
So it's very valuable to hear that confirmation from other people. I certainly appreciate being here, and I can tell you that the presentation I do tomorrow will in fact be geared differently because the nature of our business is different. We have only 380 customers, whereas many of the businesses here have multiple thousands of customers.
Right.
But then our field service tend to be dedicated to a particular customer for a few years, whereas I think here it's very much go in your vehicle, make a fix, come back,
Right.
rather than being with the customer. So
I actually have one more question. So, working in aviation, how do you really train your technicians on something that's so specialized?
how do we train?
Train, yeah.
Yeah, how do we train? Well, again, this is part of what I would say is the evolution. In the early days, we chose field service based on their very strong technical knowledge and the fact that they could speak English. And that was the criteria to go around the world and essentially represent Airbus and be the frontline technical support.
Right.
I think now there has been a tremendous shift in what is needed from a field service. It's no longer the strong technical knowledge, it's more the partnering attitude, it's more how can I help make a solution to your problem. And so in terms of training, we're now doing much more deployment of soft skills.
Okay.
We're doing obviously much more awareness of about how customers think and what it is to be a partner with a customer rather than pure technical training.
So how do you train soft skills? Like what are you doing to?
Well, we have 300 people worldwide, and what we do every year is we divided the world into 10 regions, and every year each region has its own conference. So during that conference, which is also a team building exercise, it's also an opportunity to share topical information about Airbus and updates of what's going on at headquarters. But that's also a time that we send out instructors to actually spend time, quality time, doing soft skills training with our field service guys. So we do one course for everybody at least once a year. It's quite expensive, but as you can probably understand, it's really an investment.
Valuable. Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being with us today and taking the time to talk to us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Diana, it's a great pleasure. Thanks to you.
All right.